Hello and welcome to another episode of Set Musings. So we're up to Return to Ravnica now. So first set of the block, 274 cards released on the 5th of October 2012. The breakdown in the cards is 25 basic lands. So just looking at that value, you'll probably realise that that is 5 different pieces of artwork per colour of mana. There's 101 commons, 80 uncommons, 53 rares and 15 mythic rares. So stuff to look out for in terms of themes and mechanics. So we've got gates in the sets, both as cards and references to gates. We've got the Ravnican guilds. We've got hybrid mana. In terms of keywords and abilities, and these map to the different Ravnica guilds, we've got Detain, Overload, Populate, Scavenge and Unleash. So you can see there's 5 there that correspond to specific colour combination, 2 colour combinations. So in terms of those 2 colour combinations, what you have in the set is you have white-blue, which is the Azorius Senate. You have Cult of Rakdos, which is black-red. Selesnya Conclave, which is green-white. Izzet League, which is blue-red. And then Golgari Swarm, which is black-green. So again in that order, Azorius has a keyword or ability word Detain, Rakdos has the Unleash, Selesnya Populate, Izzet Overload, and then Golgari has Scavenge. And as we go through this, you'll also see other themes going on. So you might notice with Azorius you might see a control theme like bounce effects, counter spells, taxation effects, combat abilities like flying and vigilance. With Rakdos you might see like a +1/+1 counters sub-theme. With Selesnya you might see like weenie tokens and creature token sub-theme. Obviously that fits in with the Populate. With Izzet's spells, a sub-theme, and then with Golgari, Graveyard Matters. So all of those sub-themes fit very nicely with the specific keyword or ability word that you're going to see. As I go through this, when we get to the cycles, you'll notice there's, in effect, 2 distinct types of cycles. There's cycles within the individual set, but more importantly is the mega cycles which spread across the block. Now I think every single cycle except one does actually spread across the set. There's a bit of a weird cycle which I think only features in the last set of the block. And you'll also notice, just because of this sort of breakdown with the guilds and the way it's split down, and you could argue it might be done in a slightly better way maybe than was done in original Ravnica, depends on how you look at it, because there, if you remember, they sort of split it down. So there was, I think it was a certain number in the first set, a certain number in the second, and a certain number in the third. So by the time you got to the third set, you had all 10 guilds. With this one, you've got 5 in the first, 5 in the second, and then I believe all of them in the third. But we'll get our heads around that better as we move through the block as part of these set musings. So I'm just going to scroll down so you can get the sort of aesthetic feel for the set generally in terms of the artwork, and maybe spot a few things to do with frames. And you'll notice the presence of watermarks here. which is a nice feature if you're looking to find ways where you can easily understand how a particular card might fit into a guild, even if it isn't in the guild colours. And of course another way you might notice that is because it does, even though it's not in the guild colours, it does mention the guild keyword or ability word. And as we go through, I'll highlight other little sub-themes as usual. We'll get a feel for the creature sort of breakdown in terms of different tribes maybe. And we'll look at the different colour combinations as well to just give us a nice overview here. And then as we go through further, we'll start to look at the different card types and how they break down in the set. But yeah, big set. And again, we might notice as we move through the block, we may not see quite the same, large, small type setup. But again, we'll see. Now notice we're in, looking at where I am here, we're just over halfway through the scroll, and we've already moved into the multiple colours. So, we're going to see a lot of multicolour cards, obviously, because the set is very strongly built around the Ravnica two-colour guilds. The other thing you might notice is you may see echoes in the keywords and abilities to keywords and abilities that you would have seen in original Ravnica as well. That's quite possible. And then we've got a number of interesting artifacts as well in the set, which we'll go through, and some also non-basic land mana fixing, and then we'll have a look at the actual artwork for the basic lands in a moment. But I just wanted to give you a general overview of the way the cards look aesthetically, and also just in terms of a few other things that you might notice as I was scrolling through. So let's talk about reprints first. So there's 19 reprints in the set. And you can see again I've netted off the basic lands. So you notice Pithing Needle's been reprinted. These are reprints as well. The dual lands here, which we'll come on to in a moment. See, Giant Growth gets new artwork. In fact, you notice a number of reprints there getting new artwork. There's 230 cards that aren't reprints, or weren't reprints at that point in Magic's history. And in terms of the overall colour breakdown, and again remember this is done by casting the colour and the casting cost, not the colour identity. So we've got 12 cards which have no colour in their casting cost, but you can see we've got a number here, these key runes, which we'll take a look at, which do have some colour references in the rules text. But you'll see all of these cards, the common denominator is there's some form of artifact. Monocolour cards, we've got 140 monocolour cards. And then 84 cards which are multiple colours, and notice as I mentioned we've also got hybrid mana in the set. We have 32 white creatures. So you can see, let's just see what pops out in terms of major tribes. So definitely humans and human soldiers here. In terms of the multiple coloured cards, again we've got some humans, bird there, sphinx, few birds, there's a spirit there, and obviously spirits were a thing previously to this in the previous block. Some dryads and cleric here, but it looks like the predominant tribe is going to be humans, and the subtype of soldiers is fairly well represented here. In blue, what do we have here? A few humans again, and of course again we're going to see in blue cross over into blue, white and blue, red. Because all the cards I look at here feature blue, they're not like monocolour blue exclusively. Some elemental dragons, more humans. Yeah, subtype of wizards obviously here. Some weirds. Some birds in blue, white. A couple of Adelkans. So a bit more random's the wrong word, but a wider range in some ways of, you know, like smaller numbers of certain creature types than maybe we see in white. So in black, I was always curious as to see, you know, do we see a lot of vampires or zombies? And clearly we can already see a few. We've got some rats. Again, humans seem to be appearing so far in multiple colours. A few here, horrors. Again, we're starting to see the odd elemental across the colours as well. But some interesting hybrid types as well when we get into the multiple colours. What about in cards that contain red? So 33 here. Actually I probably didn't mention there. So 37 cards containing black and 31 cards containing blue. And of course some of those are going to be represented multiple, you know, obviously more than once for multicoloured cards. So what's our goblin situation like in red for this set? So again we've got humans coming over across all ones, and a number of warriors as a subtype. Again you notice there's been several horrors as well, and several elementals. And these weirds in blue-red, dragons. And there's our wizards again, which we saw earlier. And then we move on to green. So, yeah, beasts, more humans. Got many elves. There's a few there. There's our ooze. Shamans. And some of these we would have already seen already when we looked at white. So 35 there. Big spells, so anything greater than 6, so 7 and more. And these are in order of mana value. So we start off with Angel of Serenity, so quite heavily invested in white there to play this. 4 and 3 white, so 7 in total. And then we move through, you can see here, a number of multicoloured cards. And then ultimately we end up with a World-Spied Worm, which is This one you heavily invested in green. 8 and 3 green. You can see we've got a few here as well that are double particular colours. So we've got a double green, double black, double red. And in terms of the colour coverage, so single one in white, couple in black, couple in red, 4 greens, and then some multicolours. And you can see they're in various types as well. Have we got everything? We've got predominantly creatures, enchantment, 1 enchantment, and an instant. Oh, there's a sorcery as well. No big artifact in this set. You remember I said that the gates were something to look out for in the set as a theme or a mechanic. So you can see here we've got the non-basic lands which are gates, but we have a number of cards here which mention gate in the rules text. As you can see, as long as you control a gate. And this one is a gate tutor. Defender, something else that was in here. Couple in blue, 1 in black, red, green, and then black, green. And then moving on to the colour combinations. So this is Azorius. Got 17 Azorius cards, of which are both, obviously they're all multicolour, but some are hybrid mana, and some are just a regular multicoloured casting arrangement. And you can see here, here's our black-red, our Rakdos cards, and notice the presence of the Rakdos watermark there. Of course, these are across all spell types, and there's 17 of those, and we got 16 in our green-white colour combination, our Selesnya colour combination. We've got 17 in blue-red. Which is our Is It combination. And then in black-green, we also have 17. Which is our colour combination for Golgari. 15 cards which have hybrid mana. So now for the Azorius keyword and ability. You can see, if we look here, it's Detain. So with Detain, until your next turn, that creature can't attack or block, and its activated abilities can't be activated. So 9 cards that mention Detain. Now notice the cards are in the appropriate monocolours, so white, blue, and multiple colours as well. So we've got 12 cards which reference Overload, and again in blue, red, or blue-red. And with Overload, so you can cast the card for its regular casting cost, but you have an overload cost. So if you decide to pay the overload cost, you may cast this spell for its overload cost. If you do, change its text by replacing all instances of target with each. So you'll see every one of these cards is a targeted spell of some description, so it's going to be either an instant or a sorcery. Then we move on to Populate, which is our green-white keyword or ability word. And there are 11 of those. So we've got with Populate, so to populate, put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of a creature token you control. Damage and effects that say destroy, don't destroy indestructible creatures. And that's just, well, ignore, I just, of course, wasn't thinking there that this also has populate and indestructible. So obviously there's, they've carried on with the reminder text for indestructible, but for cards where it is just reminder text for populate, it's just going to say put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of a creature token you control. And you can see with some of those, you know, the context might be different. So you've got instants that do populate, you've got enchantments that where populate triggers at a certain point, and then you have creatures which is part of an activated ability or some other trigger, like a combat trigger, can also populate. We've got Scavenge, which is the black-green Golgari ability, and there are 10 of those. So with Scavenge, you can see here we have a cost here. So, and as you can see, they're all attached to creatures. So let's use this as an example. So 2 and a black, and then exile this card from the graveyard, put a +1/+1 counter equal to this card's power on target creature, scavenge only as a sorcery. And you can see that's the same for all of those. The only thing that changes is the scavenge cost. And then Unleash, which is the black-red one. So that's Rakdos. And so again, we've got +1/+1 counter thing going on here. So you may have this creature enter the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it. It can't block as long as it has a +1/+1 counter on it. So you may also notice something similar to in this set that happened, or this block that happened with the previous Ravnica block, in that there may be a bit of overlap with the different guilds in terms of certain synergies that might work between a couple of guilds. So let me just show you here. So you know, you've got the use of counters in both the Golgari side of things and in Rakdos, and you can see they do share a common colour, which is black. So, you know, is there a possibility for a green, black, red deck, like a 3-colour deck? And that's something else if you played original Ravnica, and with the breakdown of how some of the guilds appeared in various sets. You know, they worked together in certain ways. Certain guilds worked together. So there was a land enchantment thing going on. These land auras. So they all enchant a land and grant that land an activated ability with a tap in its cost. and a triggered ability which triggers when the land is tapped or lets it untap during each other player's untap step. You can see here, these are the ones where they've got the tap on them, and these are the ones where they've got some other triggered ability. So a bit of a mixed bag there. So one each of the colours for our cycle. There was a cycle of uncounterable spells in here. So they're rare multicoloured spells with an ability to not be conventionally countered. And now we move on to more cycles that were across the blocks in various ways. So we've got the charms, you can see here, one for each of the 2 colour combinations in this set, or 5 obviously. And the modal spells, so you get to choose one, and it's 1 out of 3. Now, did I miss one accidentally here? Because I might have done. I thought there was also an off-colour activation card as well in this. I wonder if I accidentally skipped over that. Yep. So the cards that I'm thinking of, which I've missed here, I'll come back to that cycle, I think, and I'll just carry on. So those are the guilds, so those are the charms, and then we've got these here, which are guild mages. So they're uncommon 2/2 creatures, which cost 2 colour mana, 1 of each of its guild colours. Each gold mage has 2 activated abilities that cost both colours of its guild and are thematically related to both of the colours of the guild. And you'll notice they have obviously a gold coloured card frame. And you can see that when we look at some more hybrid ones, you'll see that, or the ones we've looked at, the frame's slightly different. So next up we've got these. You can see these are all at Mythic. And these are the guild masters. So they're all mythic rare legendary creatures which represent the current leader of the respective guild. One thing we won't see yet in this set is the what are called the guild champions. You don't see those until later in the block. We've got multicoloured spells at Mythic. They're thematically unrelated except for being multicoloured spells at Mythic. And we have these, which are the hybrid spells at common. You remember I said look at the different frame borders for this, different from say a regular multicoloured card. So these hybrids are all at common, again thematically unrelated except for being hybrid spells, and you can see they all contain 2 of the particular hybrid colours. There was also a cycle at uncommon, and you can see these are all one CMC, but they're made up of a hybrid spell, hybrid colours, 1 of each. And then if you're wondering, there's the ones at rare. So these are slightly more mixed in terms of the hybrid casting cost. And again, it's a little bit random. You'll notice that some do reference the set mechanic, but others don't, although they do play around with the theme. We've got the key runes here, so there's a cycle of key runes. They're all uncommon, they're all artifacts, and they can tap to produce 1 mana of either of the 2 colours of the guild which they're associated with, and they have an activated ability allowing it to become a creature, and there may be an additional ability there as well. And you can see the activation is 1 of each of the 2 corresponding colours for that guild. We've got a cycle of shock lands, so these, when they enter the battlefield, you have to pay 2 life, and if you don't, well, actually you don't have to, you can choose to, so you can choose to pay 2 life. If you do, they come into play as normal. If you don't, then they enter the battlefield tapped. Hence the name Shocklands. And then we've got a cycle of guilds. These are all common. They have the gate subtype, they enter the battlefield tapped, and they produce 1 each of the respective guild colours. Now my understanding is that rather than reprint the crew lands or bounce lands, they chose to go down this option in terms of something that would appear at common, and that way those other lands I've mentioned, like the bounce lands, the crew lands, would considered to be too good in limited at the time, so they went with this sort of thing. And then we've got a pair here. We've got Downsize and Diner Charge. They're both overload cards, but you can see 1 is a shrink, 1 is a pump. And then we've got a match pair in the form of Chemist's Trick and Teleportal. And again, this sort of shrink pump relationship between the 2. So let me just go back, because we just talk a little bit about the cycle with the activated ability cost of another mana of the guild. So the sort of cards that I'm thinking about is in the cycle is, let me just go back to here. play around with this moment. So we have Tower Drake. You can see here 2 and a blue with flying and with an activation cost in white. Another example would be Deviant Glee. Another one will be Selesnya Sentry, which is the obviously the Selesnya one. We've got Pursuit of Flight. That's your Is It one. And then finally we have Stonefair Crocodile, which is our Golgari one. So that was a cycle of permanence with an activated ability costing a mana of the other colour of the guild for which they are aligned. "15 Mythic Rares," and you can see a number of different things here going on. We've got a couple of Planeswalkers. We've got some legendary creatures, and we've also got some regular creatures and some instants. And was there a sorcery there? Yeah, there was. Again, we don't seem to have a mythic enchantment or a mythic artifact in this particular grouping. But if you can remember, within this is that cycle of mythic legendaries, one for each of the guilds. Here's our basic lands, and this time round we've got 5 pieces of artwork in each of the colours, as opposed to 4 or 3 or 2 or 1 as we've seen over the years in Magic's history, getting up to the present day. So we're up to 5 for this particular set. And 13 non-basics, of which 10 of these we've seen already, because we had obviously the pain lands, the shock lands, and the gates. The additional ones are, oh look, Rogue's Passage, which we've seen multiple times when I've done Commander Durdle, and this Transguild Promenade. So you often obviously see this in multiple colour sets where they also include a land at least, and some artefacts as well, which we'll look at, which fix in some way, manner of any colour. This one is a common, so obviously it's more of a filter land, so that it's not stupidly good. And also we've got, where are we here? This Grove of the Guardian, which is interesting. So legendaries, and you've seen, I think, all of these already. So 7 legendary creatures, 7 legendary cards. 2 are Planeswalkers, and the rest, the remaining 5, are creatures, which we've all already seen. So 124 creatures in total. We've got 15 enchantments, and you can see they do a number of things. There's one here, for instance. So, with these, if we keep our eyes open for the watermarks, we can see a number of these are specific to certain guilds, but it doesn't seem to be equal. Now that's not to say they don't do things that are synergistic in some way with either the mechanics of the guild and the themes or the keywords or abilities, but they don't. You can see a lot of them aren't specifically marked up or don't have the specific ability for the guild. We've got 14 auras here, and you've already seen, I think, a cycle of those within this. There's one multicoloured one there, although you can see we've got ones where there's the casting cost is a single colour, but then there's activation cost in another colour. And you can see here these are our land enchantments that I'd mentioned previously. Just two artifact creatures here. We've got Street Sweeper and Volatile Rig. We have one piece of equipment, Civic Sabre. And we have 9 regular artifacts, of which 5 of those are those key runes. So additionally we have Chromatic Lantern, which is our sort of rare colour, mana fixing and also mana boosting card. We've got Codex Shredder, which is a mill card. We've got Pithing Needle, which is a way of hating on a particular card. And we've got Tablets of the Guilds, which gives you a bonus for a particular colour combination that you can see you name when you enter the battlefield. You're getting life gain off of that. And of course, one of the reasons probably we don't see multiple artifact colour fixing is the presence of the 2 colour ones. So often you might see an additional filter artifact as well in a set where there's so many colours, but we don't need that because we have these key runes, albeit at uncommon. And of course we have the gates as well, so that helps. So 46 instants here. I'm not going to go through these in quite the same detail I normally do, but as we scroll through, keep your eyes open for the particular guild keywords and abilities. So you can see we've got Populate there. So what I'm getting at is that there was a lot of types of spells that you would see in certain colours, and then they'd have the particular keyword ability of the 2 colour guilds sort of stapled onto them. So you can see here we've got Cyclonic Rift with Overload on it. We've got a number of Populate things, and they really stand out because of this watermark as our counter spell. It's a reprint, obviously. You can see here we've got some fairly straightforward spells which are reprints. So again, nice and easy to focus in on the stuff that's been stapled together with the set keywords and abilities because of the presence of the watermark. And then a number of instants in multiple colours. Again, we have the charms, so very useful modal spells, but also other cards that played around with certain aspects of the set themes in some ways, without maybe specifically mentioning a keyword or ability. 25 sorceries. Now here you'll see again the presence of the guild watermark. There seems to be, in this one, in terms of the balance between mono-coloured and multicoloured, is slightly different than the instance. But again, we've got 46 cards to play with instance, whereas we only have 25 sorceries. But again, you'll notice, even if it doesn't explicitly mention a keyword or ability, you can see which cards are playing to guild themes. Here. And again, it's nice to have that watermark to sort of point you in the right direction, just in case it's not obvious. So that's a real great help when you say drafting this and you're sort of up against the clock trying to make a decision about what to pick. So we're back to the set as a whole. And let's have a look at the prices here. So, most expensive card currently in Return to Ravnica is Cyclonic Rift, clocking in at $36. Then we've got Atvari Hellkite. I don't think I'm super familiar with this. So whenever a dragon you control attacks, put a 6/6 red dragon creature token with flying into the battlefield. Okay. So $20. Only been. That's interesting. It was reprinted in that guild kit. I wonder how many of these have been reprinted in those guild kits. The Commander product there. Blood Crypt. These were from Dissensions. These would have been from the original Ravnica block. Now notice the price difference here. And notice, as I pointed out, they opted not to reprint the bounce lands from that block, from the previous Ravnica block. So yeah, these are all somewhat cheaper than the originals. So already we're getting very close to the $10 cutoff. And that's all of those shock lands. Chromatic Lantern is $11. It's been reprinted a few times. It's also as an invention. Pretty nice artwork on that. Dreadbore. Yeah, we're just below the $10 here. That was in the Arch Enemy and the guild kit. So again, we're seeing references to those guild kits. And now we get into Supreme Verdict. So yeah, some of those big spells as well. Worldspine Worm. We saw a big spell earlier as well. And there's Deathrite Shaman, so we're well below the $10 mark now. And then I don't think anybody's going to be surprised what to see when we're looking at things that are popular in EDH rec, in terms of the ranking and in certain decks. So we've got Cyclonic Rift, we've got Rogue's Passage, surprise, surprise. We've got the Shocklands, Chromatic Lantern, Vandal Blast, Dispel, Deathrite Shaman. Obviously Overload, you can see how this could be very useful. What else? Deathrite Shaman, Charm, Abrupt Decay, Supreme Verdict, Gutter Snipe, Sphere of Safety, and then the gates as well. Nice cheap way of doing mana fixing. So a few other things about the set. first thing I want to talk about is the pre-constructed decks. So we've still got both intro decks and event decks. Intro decks, if you remember, we're now up to 2 boosters in each, in addition to the 60 card deck. So no surprise to see in here we've got the guilds, the 5 guilds that are in the set. So 3 of the guilds are allied guilds, 2 of them are enemy. With the event decks, we've got 1 that's an enemy colour combination and 1 that's an allied colour combination. So let's see the makeup of the intro decks. So you can see dead giveaway by the names as in terms of what the combinations are. So, and of course they're going to play to the particular themes, keywords, abilities of that particular colour combination. So we've got the white-blue one with Archon of the Triumvirate and Righteous Authority. And you can see they've got guild gates as a fixing here. Is it Ingenuity? And our rares are Hypersonic Dragon and Mysian Mortars. Rakdos Raid with Carnival Hellsteed and Cryptborn Horror. Golgari Growth with Corpsejack Menace and Wild Beastmaster and Selesnya Surge with Grover the Guardian and Wayfaring Temple. Now, one thing you'll notice with this, if we scroll back up, I think none of these feature a legendary as the one of the rares. That was to come later in the block. And then we've got the event deck. So we've got Golgari Creep and Conquer. So it's very much tied to the Golgari theme. But as I pointed out before, you're going to see cards in here that are legal in standard but aren't necessarily from the block. Or even from the core set. And then we've got the Rakdos Rack and Rage. It'd be interesting to see in the next set if they do tie quite so tightly to the guilds. And of course, again, you get a sideboard, and there's a higher number of rares in here. But you know, as I pointed out, stuff from previous sets. In terms of the Commander Follower episode, so we're under the new regime, and so here what I did was obviously picked the commander from the set, or a commander from the set. So this time I decided to pick Trostani, and then I included all the cards from the set that I felt were thematically relevant or added some interesting utility, even though you might not include them normally if you're playing these colours. So clearly this is underpowered as some filtering. We could choose other ways of fixing, but I felt that as we were playing a legendary creature from the set, I should also include the appropriate non-basic. So we have a guild gate in here. We also have that. We have a temple garden, and we have Grove of the Garden as well, because that was one with a green-white activation cost in it. But I'll go through these in greater depth when we come to do the episode. So there we have it. That's the Return to Ravnica set. So that's the first set from the Return to Ravnica block. And as we go through these, I've pointed out, just keep your eyes open in terms of set sizes, because maybe it wasn't quite as straightforward as normal just because of the the nature of the sets and how they had to try and balance out the fact that, you know, for the first two you're trying to put each of the guilds in there. Now things get a bit weird on the third set because they're in a situation where they're trying to include, you know, like the 10 guilds in some fashion, but with a smaller set. The third set was smaller, even though the first two were both fairly large. So we'll be seeing how that was tackled or not, as the case may be, when we get to those episodes. So thanks once again for watching. Bye for now, and I will catch you in the next episode.